If you became stranded on a remote Arctic island during a deadly weapons test, what would you do? War is always big business, which means the oligarchs and sociopathic commercial warlords in charge continue to innovate new and diabolical ways to punish their potential enemies. Those new methods of torture must be thoroughly tested, of course, in the sorts of places where people routinely go missing. Ray and Alan were just in the wrong place at the wrong time, but if they have any chance at escape, it's going to require they neuter their curiosity and embrace the idea that they are disposable. I'm going to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the mysterious island weapons test in Arctic Void. Somewhere north of North, where the air hurts your face and all the introverts finally feel comfortable, lies Svalbard, a demilitarized zone that technically belongs to Norway, where the locals like to joke that polar bears outnumber humans. This isn't true. There's about 10 people for every bear. But in a fight of 10 to 1, I'd still bet on the bear. Nature show host Ray and his uptight producer Alan arrive to Svalbard, where they meet up with Sean, a new cameraman replacing their old one at the last minute. Alan's about as friendly as an icicle enema, alienating Sean right from the start. On board the ferry to their even more northerly final destination, the ship's co-captain welcomes everyone. Today's passengers are a veritable bouquet of various shades of beige, with tourists from Lower Norway, Sweden, and Germany, along with the weirdos from California. Even though they got off to a rocky start with cameraman Sean, Ray and Alan make up for it by rooting around in his personal effects for and giggles.
Yep, got for lunch, Ray. Whoa.
Sean has brought a vintage audio recorder with him. Ray turns it on and listens to something that sounds like 1,000 whales being jerked off by a synthesizer. He gives it to Alan, who listens for all of 2 seconds before Sean returns, and they narrowly get the case closed before he catches them. Sean heads outside to send off an unseen message via satellite phone before Ray films his opening piece with Jim, Thor's more feral cousin. Jim tells the men this place belongs to nature, and she'll kill you if you don't play by her rules. Nearby, a seagull with its eyes gouged out watches the show.
Do you see that?
And a little later, they watch as a mother walrus rears back and gores its own baby to death. Alan's shocked, but Ray takes it in stride, saying this is the sort of weird place where these things happen. He says the same when Jim serves him a mink whale for lunch, saying it's legal and common in northern Norway. Nerds, give in to your desire to own a piece of your favorite characters and stories. Real die-cast metal, finely detailed, articulated models with high-quality finishes accurate to the original design. Weapons included, of course. This video sponsor, Fanhome, has collections of original in-house designs from Star Wars, RoboCop, Fast and the Furious, Back to the Future, Star Trek, Ghostbusters, Iron Man, Street Fighter, and more. To get started, pick your favorite model, hit subscribe, then every month you'll receive exclusive products and magazines. In your first package, you'll receive 2 assembly stages plus 1 magazine containing build instructions. Each package thereafter will contain 4 assembly stages plus 1 magazine. I just got the next 4 stages of my Optimus Prime build, which includes his feet, legs, and feet and leg wheels. He's a bit armless, but at least he can still kind of run. I do like how it comes in these stages, making it less daunting and more of a fun thing to keep chipping away at every now and then. I'd say it's coming together quite nicely indeed. Once completed, it'll make for a nice display on my mantle. To get started building awesome, high-quality models to display on your mantle, go to the link in the description box or fanhome.com/nerdexplains, choose your model or collection, and subscribe. All subscribers will also receive an Optimus Prime t-shirt, keyring, mug, and 2 posters if you use my code NERD23. Sean heads to the front of the boat to record B-roll and notices something odd. The Swedish tourist's ear is bleeding. Sean watches like an anthropologist gathering data and checks his watch as if he's waiting for the real show to begin. Suddenly, a flock of seabirds storage nosedives nearby. The ship's power dies, and Sean looks up from his camera to discover the ship has gone completely quiet, and everyone that he was taping a moment ago has vanished. Ray and Alan explore, finding everyone's personal effects scattered everywhere. The captain is missing too. Sean emerges from a nearby room and lies, telling them he was in the bathroom and didn't see anything. He makes excuses to search the engine room for the missing passengers, then descends into the dark to make a phone call to whoever he's working for. He goes through a logbook and notices that the readings on the machinery don't match the log. Upstairs, Alan suddenly starts to cough up blood. White noise pours in over the radio, and Ray tries to send a mayday, but no one responds. He peers through a set of binoculars and sees a town on the nearby shore. When he goes to show Alan, he finds him setting the tables in the mess hall for a meal that isn't happening. Ray points out the town to Sean instead. Sean makes the split-second decision they should pull the Zodiac off the top deck and head there. Ray finds Alan wandering the deck, looking at people's pictures. He's only barely responsive, completely zonked out. Ray notices Alan is bleeding. A stab wound or deep gash has appeared on Alan's throat, but he doesn't even seem to notice it.
You know you're bleeding, right?
Ray cleans it up and guides Alan to the dinghy where Sean is waiting with a rifle. He won't tell Ray where he found it. Sean ferries them to land, to the Frostpunk version of Silent Hill. It's full of buildings abandoned to the elements and left to freeze, Russian busts, and not a single person anywhere. They find an empty pool when strange squeaks and howls erupt from the lower level, like a discordant choir of Satan. This, of course, begs further investigation without a shred of survival instincts. They find a badly wounded reindeer covered in strange bleeding pits, almost like cookie-cutter sharks have taken chunks out of it. Not that they do anything about it. I mean, maybe put it out of its misery and toss some of that meat out into nature's freezer to keep chilled for us while we figure out what's happening. That would be too strategic and forward thinking for these three. They confab in the old gymnasium about their situation, and each man has a different hypothesis about what's happened. Ray seems to fall on the side of science, arguing that the townspeople must be somewhere. They just need to figure out where. Alan, on the other hand, immediately gives in to the idea that this is supernatural, and the important question isn't why others are gone, but why the three of them are still here. Sean just scowls nearby. While wandering the town, Ray hears the distant faint static of a working radio. They rush into another building to find it's not a radio, but a malfunctioning television. He says it must be proof that there's other people here, and then immediately destroys it. Ray suddenly sits down moaning and pulls up his pant leg to find a piece of flesh is missing. The wound is raw, but bloodless, with a rash of infection spreading rapidly away from it. Alan wants to rest, so Ray and Sean forge ahead without him, although it becomes increasingly vague what they're actually looking for. Alan says they're ghosts in a ghost world, and I almost believe him, with how much nothing is going on. A few minutes after Ray and Sean venture off on their own, Alan produces a gun out of nowhere and walks outside with it. He wanders away across vast plains of nothingness and encounters a bleeding polar bear, gouged with similar marks to the wound on Alan's leg.
Are you my friend?
The bear doesn't eat him, which basically means they're homies. Or they're both carriers of the same plague or alien or geostorm mutation that's left them too disoriented to do anything. Nearby, Ray and Sean see a light on high in an apartment building. They enter the bar from The Shining, where Russian music plays on an antique record player. Booze is flowing, and nobody's home. Ray searches for the person who must be nearby, but all he finds is a bowl of still warm soup on a windowsill. Suddenly, a flare goes off outside. Ray finds Alan with a gun, swinging and watching videos of his kids. Ray brings him inside to warm up with whiskey, while Sean makes excuses again to dip outside and finds reception on his sat phone. When he can't, Sean pops open his audio recorder and listens to the whale song. Alan gets sicker fast. His body loses its color. He can no longer walk on his own, and breathing gets increasingly difficult. He pulls out a camera he found on the deck of the ship and turns on its last video, watching the German tourists try whale for the first time. Suddenly, he witnesses something that terrifies him. He waits for Ray to return to tell him what he saw, but he's too weak to do it before Sean returns. With their curiosity bone deflated by the jackal that they've found, Ray finally starts strategizing an exit strategy. Ray wants to find fuel, take the dinghy, and travel back to the town where they boarded the boat, but Sean says it took them 4 hours to get here, and it'll take take at least that to get back if the conditions are perfect. Probably longer without navigation equipment, which is a problem because nightfall is coming in a little over 3 hours. Ray doesn't care. Alan is fading fast, and Ray wants to head back for civilization as soon as possible. He grabs a teapot. Sean gives him the rifle to defend against bears, and Ray goes outside to siphon the fuel they'll need to refuel. Alan cannot wait for him to return before confronting Sean, demanding to know who he is and why he came to this island. Instead of answering, Sean forces the headphones and whale song onto Alan's ears, which knocks him out. Then, Sean takes the flare gun and recorder and leaves. When Ray returns from refueling the dinghy, Alan is spewing red party juice like a sorority girl at Mardi Gras. Ray tries to redress the wound, gaslighting Alan's concerns by claiming whiskey did this to him. When Alan stops him mumbling and finds the strength to tell him that Sean knows what's happening and that he's using the headphones to make him sicker, Ray finally watches the video. The German girls were eating the whale when they suddenly disappear. The camera clatters to the deck and lands with a shot of Sean capturing what happened on video. Ray grabs the rifle and rushes outside to confront him, or in this case, drop his weapon and tackle him to the ground instead like a moron. The men fight a little until Ray accidentally dislocates Sean's arm and he spills everything. Sean tells Ray that they are part of an experiment and he was sent to capture video evidence of what happened.
We were all exposed to a vibration. It's like a hum, but you can't hear it. It's a sonic weapon. It attacks neural function, the brain.
He says the people on the ship just vaporized. His field of view shifted, and when he looked again, they were gone. His employers told him the weapon would just make the exposed to get violently seasick, but obviously that didn't happen. Ray asks about the audio recorder, and Sean says it's playing a frequency meant to counteract the negative effects of the weapon, which is why the three of them are still here, since he knows they listened to his recording when they left it in the mess hall. Ray points out that Alan didn't listen for as long as he did, which is why he's getting so sick. It's like an inoculation that went wrong. If it were me, I'd tell Sean to put the headphones on and listen for at least a full minute to know it doesn't cause the illness that's affecting Alan. Obviously, we have no way of confirming that without trying it ourselves, but Sean's willingness to put them on or not can confirm at least part of his story. If he hesitates at all, then we know he's lying. Ray demands to know how Sean was going to be recovered by his employers, but he says he was supposed to be able to radio from the boat for a pickup, but the sat phone doesn't work. No Sherlock. The first rule of government cover-ups is that there doesn't need to be a cover-up if all the witnesses are dead. Time passes, maybe an hour, maybe an entire night. We'll never know. Ray takes Alan to redress his neck bandage, only to find that sores have spread all over his body. Alan's convinced he's dying and isn't willing to put up much more of a fight. So, you need to fight for him, Ray. Alan is ill enough now that putting the headphones on him to see if they'll slow or pause his health decline is worth the risk. Bare minimum, we can watch him for improvement so we know if we need to be regularly dosing ourselves with the alien whale song to keep ourselves alive. And if it does help him, he can listen to the whale song for the next several hours until we get him back to civilization. Ray takes the camera and Alan's phone, tucks them inside a waterproof bag, and throws them into the sound, hoping someone might find them one day. He catches Sean examining the dinghy's engine, but the guy says he's just checking to make sure everything's ready for the ride back. On the way back to Alan, Sean's sat phone finds signal, and he receives an ETA message. His employers know where he is, and are coming to get him in 30 minutes. They find a wheelbarrow and tuck Alan inside to carry him down to the extraction point. Ray doesn't trust him, and of course he shouldn't. They make it to a nearby building where Sean says they should wait while he goes out to talk to his employers. Sean leaves for the encounter. Ray stays with Alan and watches him seize to death in his arms. Tragic, but also lucky, as Sean walks to the meeting point and takes one to the head as payment for all his government simp work. As expected, Ray sees his body and grabs the rifle. The ancient rotary phone on the wall begins to ring, and in the most spectacularly budget-mandated unsatisfactory ending I've seen in years, this is where we leave our final survivor, not answering the phone or going anywhere as the credits roll up over Sean's dead body. Stay in limbo if you want to, Ray, but we are getting out of this. In fact, we got out of this much earlier. Once the ship's occupants disappeared around us, we should have gone to the pilot house house, located a map of the area, and scoured the room for any sort of GPS tracker. Smaller boats aren't required to carry them, but this is a commercial vessel that carries human cargo for long stretches of time through frigid Arctic water. If it were to sink, hypothermia could set in as little as 15 minutes, with loss of dexterity occurring in less than 2 minutes. Any rescue mission would need to be immediate, which means it's very possible there's an emergency button or GPS system on board. If there isn't one, then heading to the town on shore makes perfect sense. Look for a foghorn or other loud noisemaker. Pull up to the main dock, do a thorough 1-hour search of the main grid of the town, blasting the horn everywhere as you go. If no one appears within that time, either no one's here or no one wants to help us. In that case, we're leaving. We have no reason to loiter, no guarantee of rescue or cooperation. In our timeline, we find out if Sean is in on it if he forcefully tries to keep us there. Otherwise, we refuel and use the map we took from the pilot house to navigate down the coastline until we find our departure port again. If we waited long enough to attack Sean and learn about the sonic weapon they're testing on us, then we should know any contact with Sean's company is a death sentence. He told us he's here to record the results of the experiment. He's a glorified scribe, a lab tech watching a rat twitch. You know what happens to rats at the end of most experiments? They're liquidated. Unfortunately for Sean, to give ourselves the best survival chance after escaping, he'll need to be eliminated once we know we're trapped in a weapons test. Why? Because he's seen our faces. If we make it back to normal life, he'll be able to tell them our names and what we look like. We'll also need to make a pit stop back on the boat to destroy the manifest as well. Then, if we make it back to town, we need to go to the boat tour's office and destroy any record of our transaction too. Could they still find us? Maybe, but we're not gonna make it easy for them. Whether we learn of Sean's involvement or not, filling the dinghy's fuel tank, as well as a secondary canister and sailing the dinghy down the coast using the ship's navigational charts is the best choice here. There's no reason to wander slowly through an abandoned town, especially when our best friend is choking to death in his own blood. Glance at the roofs of the buildings for radio antenna, or antenna of any kind. Search only the buildings that have them and leave immediately once we realize no one is there or no one is talking to us. If Sean reveals himself as part of the problem, then terminate him before he can alert his employer to our survival, and leave immediately just in case he already did. Take the sound recorder with you to treat Alan's sickness as you go. With those guidelines in mind, I think Arctic Void was beaten. Moral of the story, never agree to record illegal weapons testing against innocent civilians.